Hello, and today we're going to make a very nice, very easy dress. And I use vinyl. You don't have to use vinyl, you can use any other medium weight fabric. And I think it's going to be slightly easier. My only advice to you is to check if it's transparent. You can do that by putting your hand under it and seeing if you can see your fingers. And that should be enough. I do not quite recommend you using vinyl as I do because it can be very, very demanding and very unforgiving. But if you have some experience or you have some scraps you want to test it out, please go ahead and try it. And you'll have to have a Teflon foot to do that, and also you'll have to have a good needle that's going to be about 90 by 14 or something like that. So all the pieces are cut at this point. I have my bias strips that I got earlier. I have my collar right here, and I have more pieces. It is very important to mark your notches on the collar as well as some other notches on your fabric, and make sure that you have enough of bias strips to go over the armhole, the keyhole, and the neck area that will be necessary. So just make triple sure that you have everything you need. And the first step is going to be to close the keyhole in this dress. So I use the clips because the pins will leave permanent holes in the fabric. Here we go, talking about unforgiving vinyl. And I'm just going to attach it, and so I'm attaching the first bias strip. You can make your own bias strips like I did, or you can order it online. The only problem of ordering it online is going to make sure. And I use, of course, a bias tape maker. It's just easier to do it this way. There are some other methods to do it, but I just think it's easier. And all the measurements and all the details are in the instructions to this dress. If you want to take a look at it later, you can definitely do that. And this is my favorite way of attaching a bias tape. There are many other ways. It depends on which side you use and how you want to flip it later. I just think this is easier. It gives me the neat finish. And if something goes wrong, it's going to stay behind on the other side and nobody's going to know. So this is another thing that you can definitely do. And this is some of the things that you can consider. So I'm going to finish sewing the bias tape. I never cut it too short because it's easier to cut it later after I'm done sewing. And after I will finish with this sides, I'm just going to fold it over, and I'm going to have a very, very, very nice keyhole. And that's going to be one project. One last thing about vinyl is that, as I was saying, is very unforgiving. So if you're going to make a mistake and you'll have to seam rip it, the hole will remain there permanently. So you really, really want to try and take your time and do it slowly if you are using vinyl. And here is my final result. I'm going to fold it over, and I'm just going to make it a very, very nice line. If you're not using vinyl, it might be much easier for you, but what you'll have to do is to serge all the sides like it is in the instructions. And at this point, I folded over my vinyl bias strip, and I'm just going to go and stitch the edge, stitch it close to my edge to make it look very nice. You definitely want to use your foot as a measurement and to make sure you like the position where the needle hits it, so you will have a very, very nice and straight line. And again, I'm using Teflon foot. There are some tricks and tips that you can use if you want to avoid that, but I think this is just the easier way. Another thing you might have to do is adjust your feed dogs. These are the little toothy guys that are guiding your fabric from underneath, and sometimes they can leave some trace on vinyl because the vinyl can be pretty gentle. It's almost like skin. So make sure that the teeth will not hurt the fabric. That's going to be very, very painful. And here is how it looks after I'm done stitching it. I think it looks pretty neat, so I will continue with that. And my next step is going to be to connect the shoulders. And you can do it in one go. Again, I'm using the clips, and don't forget to backstitch in the beginning and in the end, so it will hold well. Another thing is that vinyl is pretty hard to press, So I honestly don't press it per se with the iron. You can use your steamer, but definitely make sure that nothing is going to melt and everything is going to be all right. Also, the vinyl that I'm using is kind of nice because it has the fabric backing. Not all the vinyls are like that. Some of the vinyls will look more like leather on the other side, and they might be much more difficult to sew, especially with a regular sewing machine. So definitely try a little bit before you commit to a very big project. And here I'm finishing off the shoulders, and soon I'm going to be able to do the neck. I like using the clips to do this. If you want to use something else, you can. Just make sure it will not leave permanent traces on your fabric. Sometimes you can get away with using paper clips if you don't want to spend money. And this is a press seam. It looks pretty neat, and the side seams are going to be the next step. Again, you can steam the seam, or you can use the pressing cloth, so you can use a little bit of cotton fabric or something to put on the top of your vinyl piece if you do want to press it using iron. And definitely test it before you decide to apply it to the actual garment that you're constructing. And unfortunately, the fact about vinyls and all the faux leathers is that they will not last as long as the real leather. So at some point, they will start peeling, and this is very sad. But we have to choose our battles. And I still think I'll get a couple of nice years. And the next step is going to be to connect the collar pieces together. You will have 4 pieces total, and you will start by sewing them around and clipping the corners, and I'll show it to you in a second. Here we are. Here is the stitch line, and here is the clipped line, just to make sure that it goes well when we flip it. And I still have my notches that I'm going to use to arrange them on my neckline. So here is my collar, it's perfectly done, it meets in the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch it permanently to the top of my dress. And after the collar will be done, I'm going to use another bias strip to make sure that I will have my keyhole beautifully finished. I just tie this dress, so I leave my bias strip ends longer. If you want to do a button, and you can use another technique, you can add a loop, and you can definitely play with that. I'll try to leave some instructions. I made some instructions to do that. But after we are done with the neckline, you are halfway through. We just have a little bit more to go, and ruffles will be one of the things. Unfortunately, I lost my footage how I gather the ruffles, but I'm just using my sewing machine, and I'm making 2 rows of stitching at the top, and one is very close to my seam allowance, and another one is about a quarter higher. And then I'm just pulling the bobbin thread, the bottom thread, and gather it to make sure that it goes well along the bottom circumference of my dress. So this is a pretty standard gathering process. I think if you Google gathering, that's going to be #1 result. And with vinyl, I definitely recommend using good thread, and definitely not skipping the second row of stitching. I know all of us, we want sometimes to do that. And I think at this point we're already at the armhole, and this is almost the same technique. The only difference is going to be to fold the bias tape a certain way before you fold it over, before you start stitching, so that way you don't have to connect the bias tape. But you can, if you know how to, and if you can measure it out and it's not stressing you out, go ahead and do that. I'm shortcutting it by pre-folding it before I stitch. And again, the instructions will have a very detailed description of how to do that. But I think it's just saving my time and saving my sanity. So this is how I usually going to finish all of my bias tape that needs to be connected before folding, unless I know it. I know what I'm going for. And now I'm going to show you a little bit of this folding technique. And I'm using my fingers. Please be better than me. and use the pin or something else to hold the pieces together. At this point, I'm very used to this and I feel no pain. And this is not the best practice, so definitely use something else. And at this point, I'm almost done, and I will show you the result in a second. And I made this dress in all sorts of fabrics and in all sorts of styles. It's very fun to play around with, and I apologize for the weird sound of some clips that were cut off. This is my first time making and editing the video, and I really learned a lot, and I hope I'll do a better job if I do it again. And I am done, and I hope you like it, and please check out the pattern. Thank you.